This is Hunt Nebraska, the official podcast for insight into Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports community. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, our space for sharing stories, information, tips, and techniques. Now, Hunt Nebraska. And welcome back to the Hunt Nebraska studio, everybody. Glad that you could join us wherever you're joining us, from your vehicle, your office, your home. We appreciate you taking us along for the ride and the day. We've got another full house here, and we're going to be talking turkeys here real quick. You've got Michael, who's our new R3 coordinator. You met him last time. He shared position with the National Wild Turkey Federation and Nebraska Game Parks. You got the Kayla back behind the board making the magic happen. You got our Hunter Ed coordinator, Hunter, in studio, and myself, Hershey, as well. And guys, we're just a couple of days away from the archery turkey season. Are you getting the fever yet?
I've had it for a couple weeks now, but yeah.
Have you really?
Yeah, See, in Missouri, we never had, we don't have an archery turkey season in Missouri, so you never get to hunt this early. It's like, oh, wow.
We're going to dive into that. I figured maybe because, you're probably moving from a spot that's a little warmer. I mean, you headed north, just a short jog.
It's really more west than north. I mean, temperature-wise, it's pretty much about the same.
Oh, good.
Really.
Good.
So maybe slightly warmer.
We just wrapped up our 2023 National Archery in the Schools state tournament last weekend, and I don't know about you guys, but it was chilly. Getting up on Friday as we were setting up, and then Saturday for the biggest of the 2 days of the event. 38,000 some archers safely flung at targets for score, whether that's 3D or bullseye. That was a lot of fun, but that was cold. I wasn't thinking a lot of turkey hunting at that point.
It's the wind here that gets me, especially in the spring. The one thing I noticed, Nebraska, obviously flat, known for wind, but the springtime seems to be known, at least for me.
Time of transition, right?
Wind's whipping, something you got to get used to and take into consideration when you're heading a field for sure.
I remember hunting an opening day pretty much like that Friday, Saturday morning where it was cold and windy. There was an opening day to turkey season a few years ago, hunted like that. It was not fun at all.
And that's what we're going to get into. We're going to talk a little bit about turkey hunting here in Nebraska. We're actually going to compare it. We've got a few of us that have spent some time outside the border of Nebraska chasing the springtime gobblers. We're going to kind of compare and contrast our experiences there with how we have it here in the state of Nebraska. But first, before we get too far, did you guys see one more state has now banned the use of trail cameras?
Kansas,
March 9th.
Yeah.
On all public lands throughout the year. Doesn't matter if they're cellular or the traditional, with the little SD card that you have there, gone. Wow. They cited some privacy issues and just kind of out on these public areas. I think Kansas is a lot like us, a real small percentage, maybe around that 3% mark for public access or hunting lands. So that's kind of an interesting twist. It's getting closer, Hunter. It's getting closer.
Yeah, let's hope it doesn't jump the border. At least puts those public land hunters, I think, at a big disadvantage, and takes away a big part of hunting for a lot of people, and that's monitoring and scouting wildlife. So that's
and I'm not a huge person of it. But I love doing that. I love it's kind of like when you're fishing. What's underneath me? What's under the water that I can't see? Same thing with hunting. What's in these woods? What's in this area, this clearing, when I'm not here? What makes use of it? Am I wasting my time by hunting this species when it's never here, or is it just here when I'm not?
Yeah, I didn't look too much into. It sounds like it's just public lands. Is that a statutory or policy, or they provide a good reason behind? You said privacy issues was the main one.
Privacy issues. There was also some concern about hunters kind of using that to mark where they're going to hunt on private lands and kind of securing, which is something that we deal with here in the state of Nebraska. That's why our blind and tree stand regulations are such that you can't just kind of save that spot. It's open to everybody, even though you might be bringing some of your equipment in there. They cited some of that, but also just the idea that some folks get out there in the great wild and uncut to feel a little bit more out in the wilderness. And when you see trail cameras out there, you kind of, but that uneasy feel and on public ground, we're not going to limit access, which is interesting. I didn't know that we'd see it creep this far east. Out west, where some of those critters have great need for hitting some of the water holes and some of the special things that they've developed to capture water out there, really concentrates them. But Kansas, you can say that probably in the western part of the state, but I didn't hear this one coming until all of a sudden, boom, it's been decided. Have you guys ever used trail cameras for turkeys?
Funny you mentioned that. I got a couple there at Christmas time, and I just put them out right before I moved up here. So when I head back home here this weekend, that's the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go check them.
There you go.
I haven't. Going back to your point on privacy, have you ever seen whenever I see a trail camera on a public piece of property, I make a funny face or do something like that. I don't think of, or I freeze in my tracks and look and keep on going.
I've had access to a couple pieces of property where the landowners or other people that hunt on that property use trail cams, and usually I'll just wave, give them a big old wave and smile.
What have you done when you've seen trail cameras out on anywhere, private or public?
The same thing Hunter does. I make a funny face.
See, I will. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, working in wildlife, having our own Nebraska Game and Parks trail cameras on public ground, you do see those pictures of people who are walking by and they make funny faces, or they just kind of keep walking and they're like, I'm going to walk the other way.
So do we have a Hunter Nikolai file somewhere in the Game and Parks in our wildlife division?
I'm like you. If I see it before I get in the frame, what I think is in the frame, I'll skirt around it. But if I'm caught, then I'll make a face. But it's some states, Wisconsin, for example, uses trail cameras on public properties for citizen science. People can go out, place cameras, and send in there what they're seeing out in the field. So it's kind of you got some states using them as monitoring and research. Obviously they're used pretty heavily, and now other states are banning them for public use on public land. So it's kind of a dichotomy. It's interesting.
I must be in the minority here, because I definitely, if I see it, and I now more than ever, I'm on the lookout for the straps, for the telltale signs that something's there. And I know there's the screw-in adaptations for those camera mounts as well. But if I see it, I skirt it. I go right around it. I don't know. There's just something about that. I don't care to see people on my trail camera, private or public. I don't know why. It's probably back to that ignorance is bliss, and I think I'm in this wild and untouched area to some extent. Though deep down I know better, but at the same token, it just kind of, and that's one of the things that I believe was cited by the Kansas commissioners was, you don't know what happens. As soon as you walk past, you might get your picture taken and end up on social media, end up someplace else, and you don't even know that it's there. And you're seeing that a little bit more so on private land, and their law doesn't go into those areas. You can still use those all you want on private land for security and whatnot. But there are some more of those that pop up every spring, every fall. Do you know this individual? They were caught trespassing. And just the thought in my mind that someone could toss my picture up there and completely erroneously say, hey, who is this dude? And I'm just walking a piece of private where I have access, or public where everybody has access. It's just one of those things that sometimes the accusation in the back of your mind. I haven't seen that happen here in Nebraska. I'm not saying that it is, but that was one thing that was cited there in Kansas. So it's kind of one of those interesting things. I have not necessarily specifically used trail cameras for turkeys, but accidentally walking through the woods, hey, what's that on that tree? There's a trail camera. That looks like one of our trail cameras. And gone and picked it up, and sure enough, there's pictures of big old strutting toms on those cameras. And I can guarantee you, my son especially, he's the one like, that's where I'm hunting next. That's where I'm gonna go. They're there at 3:00 every day. I'm gonna be there, which is kind of fun. So we'll kind of keep folks up to date on trail cameras here. Obviously, we are not talking about doing the same thing that Kansas did here in the state of Nebraska, to my knowledge. But they can be a fun resource, like any resource, though, overutilized or used in the wrong way will be the thing that gets folks in trouble. So let's get into turkeys, though. I mean, it is March 25th, traditional archery opener here in the state of Nebraska. And Michael, you hit the nail on the head. One of the first things I noticed when I moved to this state, because 3 out of the 4 of us are Nebraskans by choice, one true native born here, was the length of the turkey season. And when I saw that the archery turkey season or the turkey season opened March 25th, I was thinking, wow, that's early.
Yeah. Say Missouri season, for example, doesn't open till about the middle of April, and then it's only 3 weeks long, and it closes right there just after the first part of May. So
and at that time, is it all methods, archery,
yes.
shotgun?
Yep, all methods. Archery, shotgun, atlatl, if you choose to partake in that.
There you go.
So yeah, it's a short season. That was one of the things I was most excited for moving up here is I can finally actually hunt towards the end of May, and I can hunt all day too. That's another thing is Missouri season cut off at 1 o'clock. Once it hits 1 o'clock,
right.
You can't. So I've never been on an afternoon hunt. I don't know what that's like.
We got to dive into that because that's something that Missouri has done for forever, as far as I can remember.
As long as I've been hunting.
Missouri's been the spot you've tromped around for chasing spring gobblers.
Yep,
only for most of your hunting career. Hunter, you've been in the state that looks like a little mitten.
And more like a mitten than Michigan, don't you think?
Anytime Wisconsin can beat Michigan, I'm for it.
Yeah, Wisconsin season, I'm just had to pull it back up, but they've got looks like 6-7 day periods, and it's a draw state. So there's 7 zones across the state. Have to put in by December 10th each year with your preferred zone and preferred period time, and then draw a tag, and then any extra tags they have for certain zones go on sale then in March. So if you got a 1 week 7 day window, and then unless you got a bonus season. So
and I think of Wisconsin as being mostly north of us here in Nebraska. What's the earliest their turkey season opens? As far as either zone or method?
Youth hunt season opens April 15th, 16 weekend, and then that first season date is April 19th. So your general season's mid to late April, and kind of as you progress north in the state, you start to see turkey activity, and that start a little bit later, seem to be a little bit later. So we typically hunt in the northeast Wisconsin and shoot for a May time period, because that's when we see a lot of that breeding activity really start to pick up. But you can, depending on the year, you can get kind of screwed depending on where you're going if you've got a certain season and there's not much going on. So I think Wisconsin does a pretty good job. There's a lot of turkey hunters, and it's really to manage number of hunters out in the field. So I think overall folks are pretty satisfied with how they do it. But you are, like, unlike Nebraska, you've got a 7 day window to bag your bearded long beard or have a bonus tag. Otherwise, you're kind of SOL. So
their earliest youth season, mid-April. April 15th you bring up, which is kind of coincidentally the start of our regular shotgun season, when most of the turkey hunters here in Nebraska will pick up the scatter gun and head out. Probably the more popular of the two seasons, if you want to call them that, though it's the same permit here in the state of Nebraska. And folks, if you've ever wondered how we figure out when we start that shotgun opener, March 25th has been the traditional archery opener every spring since I've been here. Shotgun, it's the Saturday closest to April 15th. And so as the calendar changes, you just have to do a little work there to figure that out. But that's the formula, the Saturday closest to April 15th. So their first season starts about the same time our regular shotgun season does. How far into May does that usually go?
End of May in Wisconsin.
End of May, and in Missouri?
This year it's May 7th, so usually it's that's first Sunday in May, basically, is usually when it is. So it's usually somewhere between the 5th, 8th, somewhere around there.
Now, and in Missouri, similar to Nebraska, unlike Wisconsin, just that's the season, right?
Yep.
Just here's it start, here it ends.
No zones, no bonus tags, no nothing. Season starts April, usually around the 15th, 17th. Another thing about Missouri is season starts on a Monday.
Really?
Yes, season starts on a Monday. So
why is that?
I couldn't tell you. For the longest time, and when I was a child, I just thought it was despite school kids who wanted to go turkey hunting. Deer season starts on a Saturday, but no, turkey season has to start on a Monday. Whoa. But so I never got to hunt opening day for the longest time until I was in college,
Kansas.
And then then you're
Kansas does that. I can't remember if they start on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and that's deer and turkey season. It's an idea to alleviate some of the pressure or constant knocking on the doors on landowners is what they say. Now, how that works as far as I'm coming out Wednesday rather than Saturday, I don't know.
I'd say that's the pressure justification is probably, if you ask the Missouri Department of Conservation, that's probably what they'd tell you. But yeah, it's always started on a Monday, so it's usually that, Monday it's usually around April 15th, 17th, 18th, something like there. And
now,
goes till.
Do you ever recall Missouri being zoned or broken down into units?
Not any time, not since I've been hunting. And I've been hunting since I was 6, 7 years old.
Which is always interesting. Where I grew up, folks, just east of the muddy Missouri, spring, when I first started turkey hunting, was zoned. And you kind of picked your zone. There were some that were for quality, and there weren't many people there. And then there were some larger ones. They did away with that several years before I left, and which was nice because, like you said, Hunter, now I've got not only these dates, and the Iowa spring turkey season has still got 4 different season dates, and that's when your permit's good for, just for those particular days. But it was one of those things, if you did hit some weather, once they open it up to the state, it's just like, all right, well, it's going to rain all 4 days that I've got my tag available for in this part of the state. I'm going to head over to where it's going to be sunny or warm or not as windy. So obviously when you turkey hunted, you had to pick those zones. Did you ever pick it by weather, or did you mainly pick it by just where you had access to land?
Mainly by access, and then depending on where we were going, more so that's how we chose what time period we wanted within that zone. So it's kind of, but you're doing this in December, so you don't know what the winter holds or what the spring holds. So it's kind of can be hit or miss, but that's where some of those bonus tags come in. Anything that they've got extra, they'll sell over the counter then.
Okay.
And you can buy as many as, I think you can buy as many as you want of those, but depending on the zone, some zones don't have bonus tags. So if you're in one of those zones, you don't have much of an option outside of your season. Otherwise,
isn't it funny? I always got a kick out of this, Kayla. When you're applying for things in December or even January or something like that, April just sounds nice and warm, doesn't it? But it's Nebraska even. I mean, I can only imagine Wisconsin at times winter lingers just a little bit too long.
There's been seasons with 6-8 inches of snow on the ground and below freezing, and you're trying to stay warm, let alone try to call in a really gobbler.
Cool. Here in Nebraska, who's bought their spring Nebraska turkey permit? Raise your hand.
Only 2.
Do-gooders, overachievers. Look at that. I was going to say I might go out Saturday, and I haven't bought it yet. It's a kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because now I can wait and see what the weather's like and go. Here in Nebraska, folks, the beauty of it is that one permit I can start in March the 25th. I can use it for archery. If I don't get anything, once April 15th rolls around, I can use that same permit to go shotgun hunting. Why I drag my feet, I don't know, but I do all the time. If I'm going Saturday, I'll probably buy it Friday night. Unfortunately, Hunter, as you know, and Michael, as you learn, as you've taken on the new recruitment, retention, and reactivation, it's easier to sell on intentions in December when you're like, well, yeah, I might go turkey hunting. I got to get a permit now if I want to try it this spring. Where in Nebraska, just like, I'll see what the weather's like. I'll see what kind of mood I'm in. I'll see what other opportunities they have. Is there a party going on? Is there a wedding? It looks like there's a cloud out there in the western horizon. I better not buy it yet. And you can drag your feet like I do and accidentally drag your feet all the way through that turkey season as
Did I pattern my shotgun? No. Well, I'm not going to go.
I imagine, and just looking at some of our license data, there's certainly peaks when people buy, and you see them wait here in Nebraska right up until they're probably going to go out for the most part. So besides there's the planners, and then there's the
the turkey
crap,
nuts.
I'm in my truck about to go in the field, and I need to go on my phone and buy my turkey.
Then there's a vast majority. Let's put it that way. I want to be part of a majority somehow, Michaela. But it is one of those things that adds some convenience, but also makes it makes it kind of challenging. I know our fishing permits are definitely that way. If we got good warm weather in early spring, we sell a bunch. If it's a cold, wet spring, then we don't sell near as many. But back to your units, you said what's the shortest? Is it a week? Is it 5 days?
It's 7 days. So they all start on Wednesdays, Wednesday to Tuesday. So you've got
it's back
one
to Missouri
one weekend. I mean, really, when I was growing up in school, we'd go up on maybe take Friday off of school and then have a couple days to hunt and head home. So it's quick, and unless you're, I mean, in Wisconsin, it's pretty common for folks to travel to their properties up north, we call it, up north of the tension line in Wisconsin.
Up north of north.
Yeah, so a lot of people that travel to hunt, I'd say more so than here in Nebraska. You're more local hunters. So yeah, my turkey hunting has been, limited in years. I've gone up for some of the bonus seasons too, but pretty short window. And here in Nebraska now, it's kind of nice.
It is. Caleb, did your parents ever let you out of school to go hunting?
Nope.
No, I know for shooting sports, so you probably got out a time or two.
That was the problem. I was out so much for shooting sports. I was already truant, so you can't take any more days off school.
See, Mom asked recently what my dad, who passed away in 2018, what his favorite thing to hunt was, and it was an easy spring turkey. There was nothing compared. And she asked, well, how I knew that, because he hunted pheasant with us, and he enjoyed that. He did a little bit of deer. He was okay with that. Waterfowl, we drug him kicking and screaming out a couple of times. But I said, because just that was the only time I could get out of school to go hunting was during the spring turkey season. Iowa, similar, and I don't think it's changed. They've got 4 seasons, and the length of those seasons gets longer as you add, as you go through them. First season, I think was only 4 days long. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you had to take off school or work to take part in that one. And then the first full weekend started that Friday. Second season, I think, was 5, and then it went for a week, and then it went for a couple of weeks during the fourth season. That might have extended as well. But one thing I got to say, when you only have a small amount of time, this is my permit, my license is only good for a week, 4 or 5 days. You go. I mean, you definitely, doesn't matter the weather, you're going turkey hunting.
That's true. It's planned. You're it's on the calendar. You're packed and ready to go, and that, I think that makes it more urgent, urgency behind how much and how often you're going.
So when you started chasing turkeys here in Nebraska, Hunter, did you ever find that odd that you'd wake up some Saturday morning and just think, I'm going back to bed?
Look at the phone, see what the wind and weather is, and yeah, I've done that already. And I had the opportunity last year. You could buy 3 permits, so I bought them all right away, and I didn't shoot a turkey. So I put my money towards conservation last year.
Well,
and conservation
mighty
won.
nice of you.
But yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably more apt to happen too.
Exactly. It's one of those things that I feel at times like I'm a turkey hunter. I should be hunting in this nasty weather, because I used to, because it didn't matter if it was snowing, raining, wind blowing. I had to go. I had 4 days to get a turkey. Now I just feel almost lazy. But another beautiful thing is you can wait. You don't have to go out in the weather you don't want to turkey hunt in. The turkeys don't enjoy being out there much more than you do in those days. They can make for some memorable hunts, don't get me wrong, and we can talk about that in another podcast, but it definitely changed it. Now in Missouri, 3 weeks, I mean, were you able to hunt the full 3 weeks, or were you looking at weekends, or about how many days a year did you hunt?
So when I was in school, it was pretty much weekends. But when COVID came around and we went remote at the university I went to, we went remote there whenever it first happened in 2020. So that season, I was able to hunt pretty much every day. And then in 2021, we went up till spring break, which was about the middle end of March. And then after spring break, they basically sent us home afterwards. We did the rest of our classes for like the last month or so online, worked remotely, and I had a graduate assistant position, and all you had to do was 20 hours a week. So it could either be 5 days, 4 hours a day, or 4 days, 5 hours a day. And it didn't matter when you took those days, those hours, as long as you took them at some point during the day. So for the 21 spring season, I'd get up in the morning and go turkey hunting, and then I'd do my work in the afternoon, and I basically got to hunt every single day.
That's smart.
So Yeah. So, but for the longest time, and for many across Missouri, you get 3 weekends out of the year to spring turkey hunt.
days.
So,
And you can't sleep in Missouri because you can only hunt till 1 p.m. So you,
Yep.
Yeah.
yep.
Well, we need to get back into that. Kayla, when's your favorite time to turkey hunt during the day? If you've got one full 24-hour period to hunt turkeys, when's your favorite? Inside the shooting hours, obviously.
Definitely the afternoon. I am not a morning person. So if any chance I get to sleep in, I'm taking it.
So, Wisconsin, you could hunt them all day.
all day, but we typically, and I think it's probably more common to hunt them in the morning off the roost in Wisconsin. I don't know if that's just different dynamics there, different habitat type, but that's when we do most of our turkey hunting.
Now, early on in the season, I've got to say I love these warm afternoons. I think when it starts out chilly, it's almost like fishing during this time of year. The better time to be out there is afternoon. They're warmer. They're starting to spread out. They're starting to think about stuff. But if it gets chilly enough, they still got to go back kind of where I'd call their winter roosting areas for the kind of the warmth or protection from the wind, whatever it might be. But in the afternoons, they got a chance to start spreading out a little bit. I've had some great hunts early on in the season. Now, come middle of May, because we've got such a long turkey season here in the state of Nebraska, and that sun comes up earlier and earlier every day and sets later and later. I know I've been sitting out there before, Michael, and thinking, oh, why couldn't we be like Missouri? Why wouldn't they make me go home? No,
I don't think you want that.
I got like 8 more hours here that I can hunt. I'm going to hunt them because this is the day I set aside.
Well, you can sleep in, go out, get a nice afternoon nap in that
There's
warm
nothing
breeze
better than a nice nap in your turkey chair after you've sat there all morning. And it's great.
I got to go out in the morning and listen to them gobble. It's just an addiction. I can't describe it. And now during the spring, I'm to the point where I wake up naturally. I know I'm a tougher time. Oftentimes, let me say that again. Oftentimes tougher to be successful right off the roost. I've had some great hunts right off the roost, but at the same token, it's just fun. I got to listen to them gobble because I might go out in the middle of the day or an early afternoon hunt. I might hear 3 gobbles, where in the morning I heard that in the first 30 seconds.
Yep.
So
I think that's one thing. Last year I hunted a lot of mornings last year and tried to hunt them off the roost, and I struggled pretty hard. And just coming from where I hunt and how I did it growing up, that's maybe something this year. I've got to get out more afternoons, more late mornings, lunchtime, get them when they're coming off their early breed, and see if I can catch them in between. But they were flying down and I was here, and they were going the other direction last year.
They had their mind made
Yeah,
up.
they're already penned up or what. But
they do. They kind of know where they're meeting, and if it's they can roost oftentimes here in Nebraska. And I think this is not unique to our state, but roost a lot of times on public. And then one of their first meeting spots right off the roost is sometimes right off the edge of it or some kind of hidden spot out there. But then I think they get into the routine. If there's, we talk about patterning deer and patterning turkeys and all that stuff, but the most patternable animal in the woods is us. Because I do think a lot of folks go out early, listen to them gobble, no success, go back for donuts, maybe come back a little bit later and then disappear completely for the day. I've had some great hunts where I've slept in. I know it was hard for me to do. And as other hunters are walking out, I'm walking in, and turkeys are already gobbling, walking across some of the more populated and hunted public areas that we have, which is kind of unique. But it's tough. But that is going to be fun to experience a Nebraska afternoon hunt.
Yeah, I'd say it'll be the first time I've ever hunted after 1 o'clock, and I guess in the spring season I've hunted afternoons plenty in the fall season in Missouri because then you can hunt all day. But for spring season, I've never got to go on that. I've read about them too. I've read articles online. It's like, oh, try the afternoon hunt. And I was like, man, I wish I could.
Can't do it.
But I can't do it. But I will say my favorite time to hunt is there between 9 and noon. And I've killed more birds than any time between 9 in the morning and noon. It's just if you can strike one up at that mid-morning time where they've already been with the hens earlier that morning, maybe they've already fed for a couple hours. If you can get a bird struck up at that time, you're in for a treat if you can get them called in because they're a lot more responsive. They come right to you if you can get them in the right mood. It's really fun. Just sometimes sleeping in, getting out in the woods about 9 o'clock and seeing if you can strike one up then.
I'm with you there. Now, something I noticed, And you're going to have to see if you notice it this year, Michael, here in Nebraska, and Hunter, maybe you've already noticed it. These Nebraska birds, because they're such hybrids. I mean, folks, we when we were doing our turkey stocking decades ago, I should say, we tried Merriams, we tried Rios, we tried Easterns, then we kind of mixed Rios with Merriams and had a hodgepodge of hybrid turkeys out there. We were just tossing turkeys out to see what sticks and what survived. We've got mostly hybrids in the state until you get way out west, and then you can probably find some true Merriams. But these birds do kind of have that, well, they're adapted more for this open areas. Yep, we've got some really thick wooded areas. We've got some real steep and rugged areas. You get up along the Niobrara, and there are some rough places that folks can't back out in the middle of so they can stick with the turkeys. But to me, these birds in Nebraska are wonderfully vocal. They seem to gobble. It seems like more often. When I was chasing mainly Easterns, I'd get them in the morning and maybe a couple gobbles here and there before they flew up, but the rest of the day was kind of tough. And they're perhaps not as loud. I don't know if it's probably a product of where we find them out in the open and they just don't have that echo. Yeah. But what I would remember in the big timber, and I don't know if Wisconsin and Missouri where you guys are hunting are big timber, but those gobbles echoed. Just rattle the trees.
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think I noticed that last year, and maybe it is. I don't know if it's the vocalization itself or it as a result of being more of an open space that we're in, but that echo isn't quite as big, and maybe more abrupt gobbles too, and not as longer or deep of a gobble too. It's interesting, at least on the eastern half of the state here. I haven't hunted out west yet, but I think a valid observation. Maybe there's some science behind it out there already somewhere, but
turkeys sound a lot closer in the big woods. Whenever you get one, you hear that gobble, and oh man, he's right there. And then you sit there for another 20 minutes, and you hear him again. And he's like, he's got to be coming. And then you sit there longer and longer, and then he's finally there. It's like, where was he? Oh, he's 150 yards away, but he sounded like he was 40. And then when he gets to 40 yards away, he's just about rattling your head with how loud his gobble is. But there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it.
It is pretty cool. Now, I love gobbles, and regardless of how I get them. And Kayla, I have accidentally tried calling in the farmer's turkey before. They're vocal, but it is kind of interesting. And I've got to say, here in Nebraska, because these birds like the open. Where I grew up and hunted turkeys, you rarely saw them in the open unless there was an opening within the woods, right? A little clearing or logging spot or something like that. Then they might venture out on the edges of those. But out in the open, in the crop fields and the pastures, really didn't see them where I grew up further east, closer to the Mississippi. As we came west a little bit more, but here they're visible. And one of the things talking about distance, now I've called in turkeys right to the decoys, Michael, that I wouldn't even known were there in the deep woods, because as you can imagine, 300, 400 yards away, now I can see them across that pasture here in Nebraska. In the woods, that's 3 or 4 ridges away. There's no way they're coming to me, which has been a unique opportunity. It's a challenge keeping their attention that long. If they can see you and you can see them the whole way, it's kind of a game of patience and waiting them out and just saying the right things at the right time. But at the same token, it's birds I never even would have tried to hunt in the woods.
Oh, yeah. I mean, occasionally you'll get, you'll occasionally get that situation in Missouri if you've got, say, a big pasture, you're hunting a timber line at the edge of a pasture that might be a couple 100 acres or so. Maybe you've got a corn or bean field that's, 150, 200 acres. But most of the time, you're not seeing a bird till they're at least 100 yards away, most often a lot closer. You'll hear them, and then you'll finally see them right there at about 60, 75 yards, and that tends to be the time when they want to hang up.
Yep. Yeah, when they're on you, where I hunt, they're on you. You obviously can hear them, but like Michael was saying, those gobbles can sound 50 yards away and be 150 yards away, so you've got to kind of have your head on a swivel, especially when you're hunting in that more dense hardwood, and they can sneak up on you, come in silent after they've been talking all morning. And I've shot a few turkeys that have come in quiet after they shut up and getting late morning, and I probably left their hens and came in, and they're at 35, 40 yards before I saw them first. So But here, yeah, the few birds I did see last year, you could see them a lot further away where I was hunting. So,
which makes it fun, but it also makes it kind of aggravating at times, because if you can see them, there's a good chance they can see you, and they can pick you apart a little bit more. But I remember a hunt that my wife and I went on an opening day of shotgun season, and I mean, she called, and they could have cared less what I was saying, but they just loved the slate call that she was working that day. 2 big toms, and they were just coming across this field, that a little bit higher pitched gobble, and out in the open across this, I think it was going to be a cornfield. I thought they were jakes at first in the distance before they popped over the hill, and you could see them like, nope, those are full fans and big long beards dragging. And a hen out of nowhere came and pushed those guys away from, just as we, like you said, about 60 yards, they pushed them off to our south, just barely where we could just see them. Now in the woods, I would have given up because they went quiet. With her, they were spitting and drumming and doing other noises. I think turkeys have some cues that we don't even hear or realize they're doing to make them stick with it. Because that hen was not going to leave those toms, and she didn't want those 2 boys messing around with our 2 fake hens over there by any means. But it was funny. It was just kind of a slow game of, as she kind of wandered away, they'd lose interest in her and start coming, and then she'd get in front of them and push them back a little ways. And it would just, they'd get a little closer each time because she'd let them get a little further each time. But if we hadn't been able to see them, we would have assumed the gig was up. You know, we hunted, probably watched them for 2 hours and ended up getting them both because they just walked right up to the decoys finally and couldn't shoot. The hen couldn't get back to them fast enough. But at the same token, in the trees, we would have just given up 2 hours earlier and probably bumped them and said, oh, shucks, that was a fun hunt. Wasn't that a fun hunt? We heard that.
I've had several of those days where you sit there and you call and you call and you call, and they go quiet, and then it's like, well, they're gone. I'm gonna walk towards where he was at, see if maybe he's out there. I can see him in that field over there, and then you walk about 40 yards, and there he is, and you bumped him because he went quiet and you just assumed he was gone. So yep. I've had a few of those days.
What was it you were telling me in Missouri on? You can only, is it only week 1 of the season if you bag a bird, you can't hunt again until?
So in the first week of the season in Missouri, if you shoot a turkey during that first week, so from that Monday till the next Sunday, if you shoot one, you can't hunt. You can't. I mean, I guess you could go sit in the woods if you want to, but you can't take another bird until that next Monday. So you can only, and I think, again, it goes back to that probably a little bit that has to do with what we've talked about before with, more breeding success, more opportunities, and then also pressure. So I'm sure it has something to do with that. But, yeah, you can only take 1 turkey, get 2 tags, and you can only take 1 during the first week of the season.
Yeah. So this year, Nebraska's in a short form of that.
Yeah. It's quite, and I think Missouri has been kind of unique in that system. I think there's some that are more like what we're doing here in Nebraska, folks. There's several changes for the 23 spring season. Grab a hold of the Turkey Guide if you haven't already. You can find it online or at one of our partners who sells permits. But it is one of those things. A hunter may harvest no more than 1 turkey per calendar day during the spring season. And I know I've been fortunate enough to be here during some of the best of the best of the best when we probably had too many turkeys, where my wife, for example, filled all 3 of her tags in 2 different hunts. Went out opening day, and she went out the second day of season and was done. But it's kind of going to help limit some of the harvest because we've definitely seen a decline in turkey population statewide, some spots more than others, obviously. In Wisconsin, did you guys have you had a 1 bird per permit, but could you have more than 1 permit for that season?
Yeah, you could if you had a bonus tag. So if you were lucky enough to be hunting and have multiple tags, typically at the end of the seasons, that'd be more common to have multiple tags for that date range. But I've never harvested more than 1 bird in a day.
I think it's going to be unique. Now, that's something you're used to. Yep. There in Missouri, obviously. But on the second week now, you can shoot them both at the same time.
Well, no. So you can only shoot 1 a day anytime during the season. It's just in the first week of the season, you can only shoot 1 that whole week.
And then the second week,
it's just one a day. So,
what do you think about that, Kayla? You've been kind of quiet over here. I know you've been listening intently, though. What's your thoughts on that 1 turkey per day?
I think it helps take the pressure off those turkeys. It's a way of management to increase success for those turkey herds of you go out and you take 2 turkeys out of one flock, and that can have detrimental impacts on that flock if the flock is only 2 toms big, and now all those hens are on their own. They're having to go further to find other toms, and therefore they're in new areas, or they're not able to be bred as successfully that year. So there are some plus sides, but also on the hunter's side, there are some negatives that could be seen too. You want to get out there, you want to get your 2 birds, but I mean, there's plus and minuses on both sides.
I think it's fun. Anytime you go through and have the experience of a spring turkey hunt with the gobbles and getting the bird close, maybe hearing some spitting and drumming or seeing them strut or whatever it is, the taking of the bird's icing on the cake. I mean, this one here, I know I've taken more than one bird on a single hunt or during a single day, but at the same token, I think it's just going to extend my excitement. Now, I think also what it adds to it is we have a limit of 2 permits this spring, where, as you were talking, Hunter, we've generally for several years now, you could have up to 3. So it's going to allow me to extend that time just a little bit as well. But 1 bird, 2 birds hasn't really made a whole heck of a lot of difference. I've got some great memories of taking more than 1 bird, just like I was talking about with my wife. That was fun, and we can still do that, obviously. She's got a permit, and I've got a permit. But that said, it just kind of allows you to get back out there and enjoy it a little bit more during the season, because we do have a long season.
Yeah,
we really do.
It's going to be about just as much opportunity. You just have to be careful aligning your shots if you got two long beards back to back this year.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Now, turkey hunting in Missouri is a big deal. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard anything but. I mean, when I first started hearing about turkey hunting and where I was growing up, it was still kind of a unique novelty, but Missouri was the spot that a lot of states looked to. We got a lot of turkeys, we got a lot of turkey hunters, we got a big tradition. It's going to be interesting. Was Wisconsin the same way? A lot of turkey hunters there?
A lot, but I think it comes more so with the population. Probably not as much of a tradition as Missouri, I wouldn't say, but there's certainly tradition behind it.
How would you compare it with the state you live in now?
I mean, just number, I was just looking, there's over 200 permits or harvest authorizations, as they call them, sold in Wisconsin last year. But I think that's a relic of how big the state is and how many citizens. Yeah, I'd say Nebraska probably be more of a turkey hunting state than Wisconsin. I don't know. I mean, it's nothing to compare to the firearm deer season in either state. I think
right.
A lot of the traditions lie in that, and maybe it's a springtime opportunity for more hunters than it is tradition. But
having hunted in 3 or 4 states for spring turkeys, Nebraska has been one of the easiest to find permission on private ground. Spots to get deer hunted you can't even think about. Might be an opportunity to chase some spring longbeards on. It's grown. It's obviously grown, but at the same token, we don't rival Missouri by any means as far as avid or rabid turkey hunters. We definitely have a few, but not as many.
We've got a lot of diehards. They're
yeah.
Usually even in private areas. Of course, drive by public ground opening morning, you'll see trucks in the parking lot full. But even you drive down a gravel road, and it seems about every other fence row, every other gate, there's a truck parked there and a truck parked there. And even a couple weekends after opening weekend, that second weekend, there'll still be plenty of trucks out there, and you'll see lots of people walking around Walmart, just got out of the woods with their camo still on. And so there's especially in the more rural areas of the state, where I'm from, there's a lot of people that love turkey hunting. And it's a pretty big deal. Maybe not quite as like Wisconsin and Nebraska. Maybe not quite as big of a deal as deer season. There's schools and areas of Missouri that literally they'll give you the opening, like the Monday after opening weekend off. Because it's a national holiday for some people.
There you go.
But it's still it is a pretty big deal. There's a lot of diehards in Missouri, and until I now have moved up to Nebraska, I was one of those. But of course, be going back this spring and hunting quite a bit, so we'll see what happens.
There you go. Going to be fun seeing what you think the differences are and comparing the two.
I'm excited to compare. I am very excited, and it'll be an eye-opening experience hunting up here and kind of getting some of the differences, maybe changing up the tactics a little bit, calling strategies and decoy strategies and running and gunning versus sitting still and things like that.
So we're going to have to put a bow on this one real quick, though. We've got some learn hunting opportunities coming up, talking about turkeys, folks. If you're listening and want to, up your odds or give it a go for the first time, or maybe they're just first of since last year, if that was your first or second season, we've got some great opportunities. Where can folks find out more information about those workshops and online?
Outdoornebraska.org/workshop. So got a few calling workshop, patterning workshop, then some virtual workshops, and I think we're bringing in big game manager Luke Meduna to talk about some of those changes and the biology behind it at a more depth too. So again, outdoornebraska.org/workshops. You can find those and get registered today.
All right, folks. Until next time, give us a subscribe or a thumbs up so you know when the next episode drops. Thanks for being there. Hunt Nebraska, brought to you by your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.